Chapter 141. Not only did Kevin Kyle have a fixed schedule, but also the elders of the Kyle family. When Karen Daly packed up and went downstairs with Kevin Kyle, Kevin's father and mother were already in the living room. They sat together as if they were talking about something. It sounded like that Kevin's father had provoked Kevin's mother. Kevin's mother was angry, and Kevin's father was trying to coax her. The two of them were already so grown up, but they still loved each other as before. When they looked at each other, their eyes were still full of love for each other. Seeing them, Karen Daly could not resist looking up at Kevin Kyle standing next to her. Could she and Kevin be like Kevin's father and mother? Kevin's parents went through ups and downs together. Decades later, the significant other was still the most important person in each other's heart, and no one could replace them. You're all up? Kevin's mother suddenly looked over. She looked at Karen Daly and smiled slightly. Karen, did you sleep well last night? Kevin's mother asked casually, but Karen Daly, who was guilty, suddenly blushed and did not know how to answer her. Kevin's mother also realized that her question seemed to be inappropriate. She changed the topic immediately. Aunt Anne, please prepare breakfast. Yes, madam. Aunt Anne responded and turned to go to the kitchen. She thought of another thing. Madam, should I wake Miss up? Let the little sleepyhead sleep a while longer, but keep the food warm for her. When she wakes up, she can eat it immediately. Whenever Mia Kyle was mentioned, Kevin's mother couldn't hide the love in her eyes. She had been in poor health all the time. When she gave birth to Kevin Kyle, she almost lost her life. She went through a lot of complications. Kevin's father, who was standing beside her, was also the same. When Kevin Kyle was born, Kevin's mother was bedridden for a long time before her body got better. After that, Kevin's father did a vasectomy, unwilling to see his wife suffer because of him. The Kyle family was originally already a small family. Many people couldn't understand what Kevin's father did. Kevin's mother also felt guilty for a long time. That was until Mia Kyle showed up. As they saw the cute little baby for the first time, they decided to adopt her immediately. The arrival of Mia Kyle injected new blood into the Kyle family. Everyone treated this child as a treasure. Although everyone knew that Mia Kyle was not the biological child of the Kyle family, no one dared to gossip. She was everyone's treasure in the Kyle family. Whoever dared to say anything about her would lose their jobs. Karen? Kevin's mother pushed Kevin's father away and held Karen Daly's hand. She said gently, since you've married into the Kyle family, you are a member of us. You can be as casual as Mia. You can get up at any time you want. Mom, your daughter is already a sleepyhead. Do you want to turn your daughter-in-law into that too? Mia Kyle's crisp voice suddenly sounded behind them. Everyone looked back and saw that she wore pink cartoon pajamas with her messy hair and appeared in front of her family casually. In Kyle family, only she could do this. She could run around in her pajamas. No one would say anything to her. Kevin Kyle frowned slightly and said in a low voice, Go back and change your clothes before coming down to have breakfast. Brother, you are already married. Why do you care so much about me? Besides, sooner or later I will get married, as long as my husband won't mind. With her parents around, Mia Kyle felt very arrogant. Kevin Kyle still wanted to say something, but Karen Daly gently pulled him and gestured him to stop talking. It was boring for a family to follow the rules. It was because Mia Kyle was lively and naughty that the big family of the Kyle family became more lively. Thank you, sister-in-law. Let me tell you, I will be on your side in the future. If he dares to bully you, I will help you. Mia Kyle said again. Karen Daly smiled and said, Mia, then I should thank you first. Mia, after the meal, your brother and I will go to the airport to pick your grandpa up. Your duty is to hang out with your mother and sister-in-law. Kevin's father, who had been silent, suddenly said. Mia Kyle rushed to her father's arms and said, Although I also want to see grandpa earlier, you guys can get him. I will be responsible for taking care of my mother and sister-in-law at home. My Mia is so sensible. Kevin's father rubbed Mia Kyle's head. Then hurry up and change your clothes. We will wait for you to have breakfast together. Roger, Mr. Kyle. Mia Kyle saluted and went upstairs to change her clothes. Seeing that the Kyle family was harmonious, Karen Daly envied them so much that she hoped that she could integrate herself into this warm family as soon as possible. After breakfast, Kevin's father and Kevin Kyle went to the airport to pick Grandpa Kyle up. It was only then that Karen Daly remembered that she had been thrown into a mess by Kevin Kyle last night and had forgotten what to gift to Kevin's father and Mia Kyle. It was not good for her to ask Mia Kyle directly and ask what she liked. It would seem that she was not sincere. While she was thinking, she received a message from Kevin Kyle. Go to the room and have a look. On the coffee table in the little hall, she didn't know what Kevin Kyle wanted her to see, so she went upstairs obediently and opened the door. She looked up and saw 2 gift boxes on the tea table. As Karen Daly approached, she found that one box consists of a tea set, and the other was a book about self-cultivation of the actors. Seeing these 2 gifts, Karen Daly suddenly understood that Kevin's father must have had other hobbies besides traveling, because she kept thinking about traveling, forgetting that there were other possible hobbies. As for Mia Kyle, she liked acting, so the best gift was to give her a gift related to acting. Even if she didn't lack anything, receiving such a gift was to support her hobbies and to assure her of her career. Judging from the gifts, Karen Daly knew that she knew only a little about the Kyle family, so she had to work harder in the future. Sister-in-law, I want to go have a walk in the back garden. Do you want to go with me? Mia Kyle stuck her head out from behind the door and asked with a smile. Okay. Karen Daly turned around and followed Mia Kyle out. The back garden was a garden behind the villa. It was not big, but there were many uncommon flowers that were rarely seen. After strolling for a while, Kevin's mother was tired and they sat down in the pavilion to chat. Mia, go get me a coat. Kevin's mother sent Mia Kyle away was because she wanted to talk to Karen Daly alone. Mia Kyle was liked by the Kyle family. Not only was she lively and cute, but she was also very sensible. Chapter 142. Knowing that her mother wanted to talk to her sister-in-law alone, Mia Kyle ran away without saying anything. Seeing Mia Kyle walking away, Kyle's mother took Karen Daly's hand and said earnestly, Karen, Matthew is a cold person. He may not know how to say good words to make you happy. Please forgive him in this aspect. Kevin's mother's sudden words made Karen Daly understand that it was not an easy thing for her to really integrate into this family. Kevin's mother is willing to accept her, but deep down she treats her son and daughter-in-law differently. Otherwise, how could she say that to Kevin Kyle? However, this was human nature, so Karen Daly did not care about it. She nodded and said, Mom, I know about it. Looking at Karen Daly, Kevin's mother paused for a while and said, There is something I think I must tell you. Karen Daly said politely, Mom, please go ahead. Mia is my adopted child. Your grandfather had always intended to match Mia and Kevin together, but there is only sibling love between them. No one wants to advance further. While speaking, Kevin's mother observed Karen Daly's expression. She thought Karen Daly would be surprised or dissatisfied, but Karen Daly's eyes were calm and gentle, and her eyes were clear. Looking at her calm and gentle face, Kevin Kyle's mother had a little more affection for her. She held Karen Daly's hand tighter and said, When Grandpa arrives, if he says something unpleasant, please don't take it to heart. Anyway, you're Matthew's wife. This is something that no one can change, isn't it? Karen Daly smiled and said, Mom, in fact, I've heard about it before, but I chose to believe in Kevin. As you said, I am already his wife, and this is a fact that no one can change. Karen Daly had heard from his uncle at the charity dinner before. Later, when she knew that Mia Kyle was not the child of the Kyle family, she had already thought of the connection between these matters. Kevin Kyle did not tell her personally, perhaps because he was worried that she would overthink. Besides, as he was involved in this matter, Kevin Kyle might not know how to open up about it. Hearing Karen Daly's words, Kevin's mother was relieved. She let out a long sigh of relief. Karen Daly left a better impression. Kevin Kyle was her child and had always been calm and reserved. His purpose was clear, and he never did anything irrelevant. When she first heard that he was suddenly married, she was somewhat surprised, but after being surprised, she was relieved. She believed in her own child's judgment. Now that she had some understanding of Karen Daly, she felt that her son's judgment was not bad. Woof woof woof. After being ignored for a long time, Momo really didn't want to be neglected anymore. She showed her existence. Momo. Karen Daly smiled and picked up the little fellow, rubbing its head. What are you shouting about again? Didn't you have enough food in the morning? Woo. Momo wiggled its body in Karen Daly's arms and made two pitiful cries like it was responding. Looking at Momo, Kevin's mother thought of Kevin Kyle again. In the past, Kevin Kyle would never allow his family to raise pets. But last night, she saw Kevin Kyle holding this little animal with her own eyes. It also made her understand that it was not that people in this world would not change, but whether he or she was willing to change. Before Kevin's father met her, he was also a workaholic. After getting married for a long time, he was also busy with work. It was only after Kevin Kyle was born that he slowly returned to his family. As soon as Kevin Kyle could support Rovio Corporation alone, Kevin's father would immediately hand it over to Kevin Kyle to handle. He had no desire for power at all. Their son was different from his father. He was calmer and more capable than his father at work. While his father was busy with work, he also knew how to make his wife happy. However, Kevin Kyle was cold-hearted in nature. Kevin's mother was worried that Kevin Kyle would ignore his young wife. However, after last night's observation, Kevin's mother also found that Kevin took good care of his young and beautiful wife. Mom, Grandpa is coming. Mia Kyle rushed over and said, Dad asked us to wait first. Karen Daly put Momo down and hurried to support Kevin's mother. Kevin's mother patted her hand and said, Don't worry, child, we are all here. Karen Daly nodded. She would not be worried or afraid because Kevin Kyle was here. They went to the main entrance of the villa together. As soon as they stood still, Old Master Kyle's car arrived. The logo in front of the car was very bright. It was still one of Bentley's model, but the color was black. It looked slightly more mature than Kevin Kyle's silver car. Mia Kyle immediately ran over and opened the door for the old master. She said sweetly, Grandpa? Hey, my Mia seems to be taller and more beautiful. Before Grandpa Kyle got out of the car, his loud voice had already reached Karen Daly's ears. One of the following two cars was Kevin Kyle's silver gray Bentley, and the other was Kevin's father's car, whose logo was a Cayenne. 3 expensive luxury cars appeared at the same time, and each car was equipped with drivers. This was absolutely not owned by ordinary families. What kind of rich man had she married into? Karen Daly thought worriedly. Kevin Kyle got out of the car first, walked to Grandpa Kyle's car, and helped him get out of the car with Mia Kyle. Karen Daly hadn't met Grandpa Kyle officially, so she couldn't do what Mia Kyle did. That is why Karen Daly stood by Kevin's mother's side quietly. Although I'm old, I can still walk, Grandpa Kyle said, but he still held Kevin Kyle with one hand and Mia Kyle with the other. Seeing the two of them standing together, he smiled with satisfaction. Matthew has become more mature, and Mia has grown up. When I look at you two, I feel so much better. Grandpa, you should stay in Chatterton Town for a little longer, so brother and I can spend more time with you, Mia Kyle said. Grandpa, I want to introduce someone to you first. Kevin Kyle let go of Grandpa Kyle's hand and walked to Karen Daly's side. He led her to Grandpa Kyle's side and said, Grandpa, this is Karen, my wife. Karen Daly was still in a daze from seeing Grandpa Kyle. She was still thinking that Grandpa Kyle didn't look like an 80-year-old person. Perhaps the Kyle family knew how to keep fit and looked much younger than their actual age. Grandpa Kyle seemed to be in his 70s at most. Karen, Kevin Kyle tugged at her again. Karen Daly came to her senses and hurriedly said, Grandpa, hello. Chapter 143, Kevin's grandpa stopped abruptly and immediately looked up at Karen Daly. His sharp eyes scanned through Karen Daly like an eagle. His gaze did not seem to be looking at a granddaughter-in-law, but rather like an opponent, as if he wanted to see through Karen Daly, and it made her feel extremely uncomfortable. Grandpa, Kevin Kyle shouted again, to protect Karen Daly. You little brat, you are married? Grandpa Kyle's eyes moved from Karen Daly to Kevin Kyle, and his eyes narrowed slightly, showing no signs of joy or anger. Yes, Grandpa. Kevin Kyle held Karen Daly's hand tightly and answered seriously. Her hand was tightly clenched in Kevin Kyle's hand, and she could feel his warmth. The slight worry in Karen Daly's heart also disappeared. She pursed her lips and gave him a smile, to reassure him that it would not be easy for her to be scared into crying. Grandpa Kyle looked at them from head to toe. After a while he said, Registered? Or had a wedding? Or is it a shotgun wedding? Kevin Kyle's grandpa asked aggressively. Kevin Kyle held Karen Daly's hand and stood straight. He answered seriously, We have already registered our marriage. We are a legal couple. Really? Grandpa Kyle's sharp eyes fell on them, slowly repeating what Kevin Kyle had said. Yes. Kevin Kyle answered more briefly, but his tone was firmer, and he held Karen Daly's hands more tightly. Just a marriage certificate? Who would know that you're married? You didn't even have a decent wedding. How can you justify this to her? Kevin Kyle's grandpa rebuked his grandson, but he was looking at Karen Daly. He changed his gaze so quickly that no one could tell. His words made everyone else perceive that he didn't mind that Kevin Kyle did not inform him of his marriage. Rather, he cared more about the fact that he did not hold a wedding ceremony. This might not sit well with Karen Daly. Dad, it's cold. Let's go into the house and talk. Kevin's father hurried forward to mediate the dispute. These two people, one was his father and the other was his son. He couldn't watch them quarrel and not do anything. Okay, let's get into the house first. Grandpa Kyle's tone suddenly softened. He did not care about this matter anymore. He took Kevin Kyle in one hand and Karen Daly in the other. My child, we are a family now. Don't be too courteous. Grandpa Kyle took Karen Daly's hand voluntarily, which meant he acknowledged her identity. The people who looked at her breathed a sigh of relief. Especially Karen Daly. If she got the approval of Grandpa Kyle, it meant that she was acknowledged by everyone in the Kyle family. Then her relationship with Kevin Kyle could continue to persevere. She looked up at Kevin Kyle and happened to meet his inquiring eyes. They looked at each other, and then they gave each other a shallow smile. Kevin Kyle Grandpa's arrival made the Kyle family even more lively. Although he was aged, he was in good spirits. His voice was loud, and his complexion was good, that kind of aura that seemed to be able to control everything. Sometimes, Karen Daly could see that aura from Kevin Kyle, especially when he was at work, as if he had a well-thought-out plan and controlled everything like an emperor. Moreover, Grandpa Kyle was more approachable than Karen Daly had imagined. When he looked at her, he called her kid, which warmed her heart. Before that, she did not sleep for several nights because she was worried that the parents of Kevin Kyle would not accept her easily. After meeting Grandpa Kyle today, the burden in her chest was lifted. Grandpa, do you intend to stay longer this time? Mia Kyle asked while massaging her grandpa's back. Mia, sit down and talk to me. Grandpa Kyle patted the seat beside him with a kind face. At this time, he had faded his cold aura. Grandpa, I think you look younger again. Mia Kyle leaned in front of Grandpa Kyle and said it in a joking tone. Ha ha! Kevin Kyle's grandpa suddenly burst into laughter. Only you have such a sweet mouth, and make me happy. Everyone sat in the living room and chatted with Grandpa Kyle. Most of the time, Mia Kyle was talking. Every time she said something, Grandpa Kyle would laugh out loud. It could be seen that he loved this granddaughter very much. Kevin Kyle's father occasionally said a few words, and Kevin Kyle only responded when being targeted. It turned out that Kevin was still very quiet in front of his family. Karen Daly thought to herself, Such a personality won't please others easily, but the Kyle family only had him. Even if he did not say anything, he still received the greatest attention. While chatting, Grandpa Kyle changed the topic to Kevin Kyle. Matthew, how long have you been married? 4 months. Kevin Kyle's answer was still short. 4 months is not short. Why haven't you told the good news to me? I mean, the baby thing, Grandpa Kyle asked with a smile. After asking such a sensitive question, Kevin Kyle shook Karen Daly's hand and answered, "This kind of thing can't be forced. We let nature take its course." Kevin Kyle's responses were always so prim and proper, which made Karen Daly understand more that his cold personality definitely did not develop overnight. In such a harmonious and warm family like the Kyle family, everyone was talking and laughing. Only he remained cold and quiet. He rarely smiled, nor would he take the initiative to converse. After dinner, Kevin Kyle's grandpa went back to his room early to rest. Karen Daly followed Kevin Kyle outside for a walk. He held her hand tightly and stopped walking after some time, then he stared at her with keen eyes. What's wrong? Being stared at by him for a long time, Karen Daly felt embarrassed. Nothing. He raised his hand, pulled her hair up to her earlobe, and led her forward. Really? Karen Daly did not believe that he was fine. I just want to look at you, he said. Kevin, why are your family members so kind? Karen Daly asked. But her family was so bad? How could there be such a big difference between families in the world? Karen Daly didn't say what she thought, but Kevin Kyle knew. He hugged her again and pressed her into his arms. Karen, will you be bored with ordinary days? How would I? Karen Daly was surprised. What a dream for her to live an ordinary life. Now that she had it, she wanted to really cherish it. How could she be bored with it? In the past, Kevin Kyle did not consider this problem seriously. At that time, he just wanted to live with her. Chapter 144. They spent their days together. They just lived together. It did not matter whether there was love or not. Maybe if there was no love it would be better, because it would save a lot of trouble. This was what Kevin Kyle thought when he married Karen Daly. But now, Kevin Kyle didn't think so. He wanted more than before. Not only did he want Karen Daly, but he also wanted her heart. Would she be willing to open her broken heart for him again? Because he could not figure out what Karen Daly was thinking, Kevin Kyle always felt that their relationship was very fragile. They would collapse in an instant even at the smallest storm. Why don't you talk? What are you thinking about? Karen Daly tugged at his sleeve and asked softly. I'm thinking if you can open up your heart and have a relationship with me. Kevin Kyle couldn't say it out, so he could only look at her silently. Look at you. If you don't want to go shopping, let's go back. Kevin Kyle didn't want to talk, and Karen Daly didn't want to go on hanging around. It's not that I don't want to go shopping. Kevin Kyle grabbed her hand and pulled her back. He lowered his head and kissed her hard. If he couldn't say it, he would prove it with action. Karen Daly pounded his chest hard and got out of his arms. She gasped and said, Kevin, don't do this. All the elders are here. If the family elders saw them like this, it would be very embarrassing. Sorry, he said. No, if we want to do it, we can go back to the room and close the door. As soon as she said this, Karen Daly's face turned red again. The gloom in Kevin Kyle's heart dissipated because of her words, and he chuckled. This woman, she was obviously so shy, but what she said was so bold. In the next few days, Kevin Kyle began to be busy again, and everyone in the Kyle family began to be busy. The Kyle family had lived in the United States for many years, so there were not many relatives and friends in the country. Those who were still in contact with them were very close friends. As the new year was approaching, the Kyle family held a small party and invited their close friends. Among these people, the one who had the best relationship with them was Kevin's mother's family, the Brown family. The Brown family was the most famous family with military power in Chatterton Town. Kevin's mother's name was Rana Brown. Her grandfather used to serve as the general of the country and had made great achievements in the past. His father showed his talent when he was young. He first served in the central government and then was appointed to take charge of a military power in Chatterton Town. In the next few decades, the Brown family had established a firm foothold in Chatterton Town. No one could move their position. It could be said that they had great power. Rana Brown's younger brother, who was 20 years younger than Rana Brown, was named Neil Brown. He had an extraordinary life. Many people wanted to be in his position. Neil Brown, who was only 30 years old, had already obtained a high rank with his own ability that many people couldn't get in their lifetime. Now he was in charge of the military region of Chatterton Town, and he was also very well known. The parents of the Brown family had passed away 2 years ago. Rana Brown was married already. Now there was only Neil Brown left in the Brown family. At the age of 30, he had not been married yet, nor had he gave an heir for the Brown family. Seeing that there was only him left in the Brown family, Kevin's mother was also anxious. But what was the point of being anxious? Her younger brother had his own opinion. To him, building a family to carry on the family line for the Brown family might be far less important than his military brothers working under him. Every year during the new year, Kevin's mother would shake her head and sigh, and Kevin's father would also worry together with his wife. His wife was in poor health and could not think about these menial things. Today, Kevin Kyle and Karen Daly were dressed very formally. Kevin Kyle looked more handsome in his suit and shoes. She wore a long knitted dress with a base, a pair of long boots, and a red coat. Her hair was tied up high, looking brighter and more charming. Kevin Kyle took her to welcome the guests at the door of the house and officially introduced Karen Daly to everyone. Every guest would be introduced seriously by Kevin Kyle. This is my wife, and this is... Almost the same words were repeated for half a morning, but he didn't show any impatience. At times there was even a rare faint smile. Looking at him, Karen Daly thought that he talked more in the morning today than what he would talk in a year. This kind of Kevin Kyle was even more down to earth. He was no longer the man who was so cold that no one dared to touch him. Karen Daly really liked him like this, so she kept leaning closer to him. Are your feet feeling uncomfortable? Kevin Kyle looked at her a while. He was free and asked. No. She shook her head and put her hand in his palm. I'm very happy today. How could she be unhappy when she was formally introduced as a wife to Kevin Kyle's friends and family? How could she be in the mood to care if her feet would be uncomfortable? If you're tired, you can sit here for a while. I'm here anyway. Anyway, at noon, Karen Daly would officially be introduced to everyone at the party, and he didn't need her to stand here with him in the cold wind. I'm not tired. Karen Daly shook her head and whispered, I want to be with you. Okay, he said. It was just okay, but it was also very powerful. Karen Daly smiled even more brightly. Mia Kyle changed her usual lively image. She dressed up beautifully early in the morning and popped around the front door from time to time. She was active for almost the whole morning, and all the guests of the banquet arrived, but the person she was waiting for still did not come. She liked the New Year's the most, but what she liked for a different reason. Other children looked forward to the New Year's because they could get a lot of gifts. But she looked forward to the New Year's because it was only at this time that she could spend 2 more days with that person. Last year, after the New Year's had passed, he promised her that he would definitely come early this year. But the party was about to begin, and she hadn't seen him yet. After waiting for a while, some of the guests were leaving, which meant that all the guests that were supposed to come had already arrived. In other words, the person that she was waiting for wouldn't come anymore. Mom, isn't Neil Brown coming this year? Mia Kyle ran over to hold her mother's arm and asked, coquettishly, Silly child, that's your uncle. How can you call him by his name? Where's your manners? Kevin's mother pinched the tip of Mia Kyle's nose. Although she was scolding her, her tone was gentle, and she didn't mean to scold Mia Kyle at all. Will he come or not? There's something going on in the military region. He can't come today, Kevin's mother said. Her brother was excellent in all aspects, but he was too responsible for his work, and he did not even give himself holidays during New Year's. Chapter 145. He could let his men do a lot of things, but Neil Brown insisted on handling matters by himself. As his sister, she couldn't do anything about it. Perhaps he was just used to being busy and working, so he didn't care about anything else. Hearing her mother's words, Mia Kyle's beautiful face darkened instantly. She lowered her head and walked forward silently. She didn't want to say anything more. Neil Brown had promised her that he would come earlier this year. Why didn't he come? Didn't he know that she had been waiting for him? She had been chasing after him for 13 years. Now she had finally grown up, but he avoided her. Why? Before that, she went to find him, but the military base was heavily guarded. Not everyone could enter. She couldn't even look at his back from afar. She also made countless phone calls to him, but each time it was his subordinate who answered the phone. He always said that he was busy with military affairs. It seemed to be a very extraordinary thing for him to answer her phone calls. She always looked forward to the New Year's holiday where everyone had a chance to meet up and catch up. But he didn't come. This night was such a downer for Mia Kyle. She felt that she had wasted 1 year of her life and waited for nothing. She unknowingly clenched her fists, bit her pink lips with her teeth, and her little face became pale. Mia, what's wrong? Are you feeling uncomfortable? Mia Kyle rarely had such a gloomy expression. Kevin's mother was a little worried and immediately reached out her hand to touch her forehead. I'm not uncomfortable. In order not to let her mother worry, Mia Kyle tried to raise her eyebrows and smiled gently. Then she pulled her mother and said, The party is about to begin. Kevin wants to introduce sister-in-law to everyone today. Let's go in quickly. Kevin Kyle took the opportunity of gathering relatives and friends to introduce Karen Daly to everyone. They were today's main stars. Mia Kyle was usually playful, but she knew how to behave right when needed. She would never make any trouble at such an important moment. Although it was a party, it was not as formal as a party. The party and gathering for friends and family prioritized comfort. The weather was good today, and the main venue of the party was set on a lawn in front of the villa. After the helpers set up the place, the whole venue looked romantic and warm. There were flower racks all over the place. A dozen lawn tables covered with white floral tables were arranged in a square, and there was good wine and delicious food. There were exquisite and delicious snacks, various fresh fruits, and some fruits that were handcrafted and carved into various shapes. Just looking at it was very appetizing. The men and women at the party were gentle and elegant. Most men were in suits and shoes like Kevin Kyle. Women were dressed differently. Some were wearing dresses, and some were wearing coats, which appeared colorful. It was indeed a beautiful scenery in the banquet. Grandpa Kyle, who had the highest prestige, was wearing a tunic suit. He looked both majestic yet kind, but it did not look odd. He was the eldest among the elders. When everyone came, they would first greet him. He would also give some gifts to the younger generation with a smile and to encourage them to study hard and work hard. He stood there for a while, looked around, and finally looked at Kevin Kyle and Karen Daly, who were greeting the guests. Karen Daly? The name was very simple and beautiful, which matched her temperament very well. She was not inferior to his shining grandson. There was no doubt that the two of them looked very well matched just by looking at their appearance, but, thinking of this, Grandpa Kyle slightly narrowed his eyes, and a sharp light flashed in his eyes. Perhaps sensing a weird stare, Karen Daly turned around and looked at Grandpa Kyle's malicious eyes. But soon, Karen Daly thought that she was wrong. Grandpa Kyle's eyes became kind and peaceful again. He nodded and smiled at her. Matthew, congratulations on marrying such a beautiful wife. The person who came to speak was Uncle Law, whom Karen Daly had met at a charity dinner. Kevin Kyle nodded. Hello, Uncle Law. Karen Daly smiled. Hello, Uncle Law. Uncle Law raised his glass and said with a smile, You are a perfect match for each other. I wish you a good relationship forever. At the same time, I hope you can help add to the Kyle family as soon as possible. Kevin Kyle nodded slightly and politely said, Thank you, Uncle Law. Listening to these words, Karen Daly pursed her lips and blushed unconsciously. In Karen Daly's view, not only were the elders of the Kyle family approachable, but all the relatives of the Kyle family were also very polite. No one asked how Karen Daly was raised, and no one asked what she was doing now. They just sincerely gave their blessings. Perhaps a really rich family should be like the Kyle family, who was well-educated, polite, and cultivated, who had like-minded friends too. Looking at the Gook family and her family, people could tell the difference at a glance. 3 years ago, Samuel Daly also took Karen Daly to a party like this. At that time, Samuel Daly was always busy bootlicking or introducing her to others. Sometimes Karen Daly felt ashamed, but at that time she would think for Samuel Daly, thinking that he wanted to elevate the Daly's family status, so he tried hard to do things that many people were disdained to do. But then, later she met Kevin Kyle and he became her husband. When people say bad things about her again, he stood behind her to support her. When her mother was forced to commit suicide, he accompanied her and helped her. She was glad that she had met him and found her happiness in her life. What's wrong? What are you thinking about? His deep magnetic voice sounded in her ears, and it was not difficult to tell that he cared about her very much. No. She shook her head and smiled at him. I feel so happy, so happy. Kevin Kyle raised his hand and touched her forehead. Then he kissed her forehead and said softly, That is a must. He kissed her under the gaze of so many people, and Karen Daly blushed again. She lowered her head and felt embarrassed to look up at him. Follow me? Kevin Kyle took her hand and left. Where are we going? Karen Daly asked, keeping up with his pace. Just follow me, he said. Okay. Karen Daly nodded. As long as I follow him, it will be fine. Follow him to find our happiness. Karen Daly thought,